Welcome back to the Custom Built and Screwed podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Eric Jensen, and today we are going to jump into a few different topics that have been bugging me. Number one, the District of North Vancouver's latest bylaw updates. Number two, we're going to talk a little bit about mortgage rates and where we see things going, or at least what we're hearing about that. We've got some interesting new construction news that is actually pretty exciting and could really help people out in terms of creating densification near transit hubs. And lastly, we're going to take a couple minutes and break down the energy savings from going to outsulation on your home. So if you're doing a deep energy retrofit, or if you're building a new home, we're all told the latest and greatest, get as much insulation on the outside of your house as you possibly can. Well, we're going to talk about that, and we're actually going to look to see what the ROI is on that investment. So let's stop talking about what we're going to talk about and let's talk about it. So the District of North Vancouver, they continue to do things that just defy logic. Nothing happening here that is going to free up housing and is going to make building new homes or renovating the one you have any cheaper. We're actually in the process of getting a permit for a home that is near a creek and it's on a bit of a slope. Well, we've now had to bring in a geotechnical engineer to examine the slope, which, if I'm being honest with you, I don't really have a huge problem with. I feel like the district should be the one paying to do that because they're trying to reduce their liability in terms of, if anything happens, because there have been some landslides in the district. But I think they should be the ones paying for it, not the homeowner, or in the district's eyes, their customer, right? Us as taxpayers, we are their customers. It's not the other way around. And that's something that we really need to see some major changes in across all levels of government. I've digressed a little bit on that. We've now had to bring in a geotechnical engineer to design a stormwater management system. We then need to bring in an arborist to discuss the condition of the trees that are currently on site. And then once we've got all that put together, we have to bring in an environmental consultant to put all of these things together and determine whether or not adding a little bit of stormwater to the ground is going to affect the slope. If the district just took care of their own infrastructure and allowed homeowners to put their drainage into the district system, and the district dealt with all of the holding tanks and detainment tanks, this would make a lot more sense, don't you think? Having to get this additional information for the district is going to cost our clients somewhere between $6,000 and $10,000, and it's going to add 4 to 6 weeks on the permitting time, because it takes time for all of these professionals to come to site, write up the reports, and then they've got to talk about things. And that's assuming that there's no major issues identified, right? If there's some major issues identified, then, we're back to the drawing board and trying to figure out, how we're going to deal with things. We're adding 50, maybe 100 square feet of impermeable space to the property. Really, guys? Really? I don't know. So we've been dealing with that. And where this is leading us to is the fact that the district has decided that, well, they want to more or less ban basements and actually move the homes further out of the ground. And this is done under the guise of, when the water goes into the streams too quickly, it can muddy the water, which theoretically affects fish. I'm not an environmental scientist, so I can't really speak to that. But it doesn't really seem to make sense, because there's all of the water off of the streets going into the stormwater system and going out. So I'm not sure how a home doing the same thing is an issue. And if this is really a concern, then why not build culverts and or district-owned detention tanks to control the rate of flow into our creeks? Why are we putting the cost and the burden of these things on the homeowner? It doesn't make sense. Because we can't use their stormwater system, they're now saying, we need to come out of the ground. And so, in order to basically allow people to have the same effective size of house that we have today, that means we're going to need to have more house above ground. So they're contemplating going to 3 stories above ground. Well, it sounds great. In practice, I don't know how great it's going to sound, because a lot of people in the District of North Van own homes that have views of the mountains, have views of the ocean and downtown in UBC. And if now the next set of bylaws allows the person below them to build an additional 10 feet higher, that could potentially block out somebody's view. Make it make sense. How about District of North Van? You dig some big holes, you make some massive detention tanks, and we control this with your infrastructure. Okay, so let's now get into mortgage rates and where we think the Bank of Canada is going to go at the next mortgage rate announcement. So in June, they held the 2.75% interest rate. Not really likely, but it's more likely than not that they will end up reducing the interest rate by 25 basis points at the next announcement, which is in a couple of weeks, July 30th. This will for sure have an impact on your variable mortgage. It may or may not have an impact on your fixed rate mortgage. If you're not already, I'm not a financial genius by any stretch of the imagination, but I watch a bunch of other people on YouTube here as well that talk more eloquently about these things than I can, or than I currently can anyways. Maybe I'll get better at it over time here. But the bond yield is what really affects our fixed rate mortgages. Is the government bond yields is what controls that, not the actual Bank of Canada rate. Now, one of the concerns that we could have potentially is with the Bank of Canada lowering their interest rate. If the Fed, otherwise the Americans, if they don't lower their interest rate as well, that could really cause some issues for the value of our dollar as it compares to the American dollar, and also the euro and other currencies. So need to be a little bit optimistic that the Fed will also lower the rate as well. I'm going to guess that they're probably going to reduce rates at least one more time this year. And I think July is likely the time to do it. So if you are looking at renewing your mortgage and that sort of thing, keep an eye on things. Certainly your variable rate mortgage is going to come down. No guarantees that your fixed rate mortgage is necessarily going to come down if you're looking to renew your fixed rate mortgage. I think for the housing market, or for the housing market and for the construction industry in general, I think that is going to help a ton in terms of attracting more people to be prepared to purchase something. Obviously, it's been a little bit quiet out there from, the people that I've been talking to and the things that I've been seeing. There's quite a few homes on the market these days, so to speak, and certainly they're not flying off the shelf like they used to. So a little bit of an interest rate reduction will definitely, I think, help to, I don't think it's going to magically go crazy overnight, but I think it'll help to get things moving a little bit. At least that's my opinion. We'll see what happens. Next up is the city of Vancouver is introducing bylaws to allow 45-story apartment buildings or condos, whatever you want to call them, near transit hubs. I mean, I think this is a great way to go. My only concern is the same concern that we are seeing happen in Toronto, and that is that developers start creating these 450, 550 square foot condos. It's just not livable, right? We need to be building and developing family ready homes. So, I am hoping that, part of the encouragement here is make sure that we're building 2 and 3 bedroom condos, not bachelor suites and 1 bedrooms, right? Like, we need places for families to live. We need affordable family housing. That is what Vancouver needs. It's what the North Shore needs. This is what our focus really ought to be. Now, I'm not a huge fan of government intervention. If I'm being honest with you, I think we need to let the free market decide what happens. And, we've let the free market decide what happens in Toronto. And now the free market is taking a bit of a bloodbath, isn't it? There's a lot of dog crate condos, as my buddy Ron Butler likes to call them, coming up for sale in Toronto right now, and they are having a heck of a time getting those things sold. So my advice to my developer friends out there, build things that people want to live in, right? Stop building things that people can rent out on Airbnb or anything like that. Like, contribute to society, guys. Like, let's build homes for our friends and the friends of our friends and our families and our friends of our family members. for them to be living in, right? Not some temporary 400, 500 square foot absolute shoebox of a condo. Like, let's just stop building those. Just stop. So, in terms of, this being an interesting strategy, I think creating these communities that are walkable communities is great. Like, if we can have communities where people don't really need to have cars to do their day-to-day living for the most part, that's going to be wonderful. That said, I think it's also really important to make sure that after our governments, to make sure that they are ensuring that developers are forced to put in at least half a parking spot per unit. I personally think it should be one parking spot per unit, because it's really difficult to live in BC and not own a car. If you want to do anything outside of the city, transit sucks. Like, I live on the North Shore. If I want to get from my house in Lynn Valley to downtown, I'm looking like an hour and a quarter, sometimes an hour and a half on a bus or whatever it is. Whereas I can make that same drive, well, without traffic, 20, 25 minutes tops. If I want to go across the North Shore, there's just no way to get across the North Shore. In order to get across the North Shore, you got to go down towards Marine Drive and then across Marine Drive and then back up. So, if you're going back and forth along Marine Drive, okay, fine. It works. The transit's okay that way. But if you live, above the highway, screwed. So let's make sure these buildings have enough parking spots so that the residents can have cars, keep them in there, and that we're not clogging up the streets with additional people just parking their car wherever they can because there's no parking in their building. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about insulation, what the facts are, at least from what I've calculated. We are currently marching towards a net zero home specifications. So a net zero home means your home, if it had solar panels on it, would not require any energy from the grid. So if it's net zero ready, it's theoretically very efficient. Now, here's the issue, right? Is when we look at a traditional home, and when I talk about traditional home, I'm talking about a home that was built in like the 70s or 80s, 2x4 walls, R14 insulation, right? So the effective R value of an R14 wall is approximately R12. This is due mostly to thermal bridging, which is something that happens through the studs, right? When it's cold outside and it's warm inside, wood it's a conductor. It's a poor conductor, but it's still a conductor. And so cold can come through the wall, through the wood. And so that's, part of the issue there. So like if we use R14 traditional as the base value for the home that we're talking about, if we increase that to R14 plus 2 inches of GPS graphene polystyrene, I can't remember the exact word. We now go to R value or an effective R value of 21.4. If we do R14 plus 4 inches, we go to 30.8. And when we do R14 plus 6 inches of GPS, we get to 40.2 as the effective R value. For the last one there, R14 plus 6 inches, right? The incremental increase of efficiency is 235%. And that sounds phenomenally amazing, right? I mean, who would not want to bite on that and be like, oh my gosh, like I would love for my walls to be 235% more efficient. Okay, well, that upgrade to get 6 inches of GPS on the outside of your house, that's gonna run you anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000, like minimally. What is the ROI? It's almost non-existent. Based off of the calculations that I've done with ChatGPT, the actual estimated savings, annual savings, $80. $80 is all you save by spending a year. $80 is all you're gonna save by spending $30,000 to $50,000. I mean, let's just pull up a calculator real quick here. Take the low number. Let's like say it's only 30 grand, which I think it's a lot more than that, if I remember correctly. 30 grand divided by, let's go even 85. 352 years? Either ChatGPT is doing a shit job on the math, or this just doesn't make sense. Listen, we need to start petitioning our governments. We need a building code that is affordable, right? All of these crazy energy efficiency requirements that are being thrust upon us just don't make sense. Now, I am talking about Vancouver only, and I will be the first to admit that Vancouver has a pretty moderate climate. Just recreated the numbers for the same wall assembly that we were comparing, R14 plus 6 inches of outsulation. We are looking at a savings of roughly $145 a year in Calgary and roughly $114 a year in Kamloops. Let's take things into consideration here, right? Like when I look at our own hydro bill, I think, we're somewhere in the $450 to $500 every 2 months sort of range. And at our home, we also have heated floors during the winter that are electric. We've got just in our bathrooms, we've got the oven and microwave that are electric. And then obviously all of the technology, like the computer that I'm talking to you on right now. Right. So there's other things that are coming into our hydro bill, which, I think is somewhere in like let's take it 500 times $3,000, right? $3,000. Well, I didn't need a calculator for that. I'm embarrassed now. So $3,000, give or take, is roughly our annual hydro bill. I mean, it shouldn't come as any surprise that the actual energy savings or the cost savings of going to a super insulated home is not going to reduce the cost of operating the home by that much, right? Like, it's not like it's ever going to be free. I know a number of people that have built passive homes, and know a number of people that actually built passive homes in Whistler. Well, after the first summer, not even, after like the first weekend of warm weather, they're calling their HVAC trades and saying, hey, I need air conditioning in my passive house. It doesn't work. All right. I don't know what else to tell you. You can get off your airy fairy, like la la land nonsense, right? When it's cold, it's cold. When it's hot, it's hot. And you need to do something to mechanically either cool a space or heat it. It just is what it is, right? This idea that you can rub your hands together and hold it out and that's going to heat up your house. I'll tell you what, go to somebody's home that is passive and be like, okay, so how many of your electric baseboards do you need to keep on during the winter to stay warm? They're going to say all of them. The cost, the incremental cost to construct to what the building code currently is bonkers, people. We need a sanity check. We need somebody to say, stop the madness, guys. This march to net zero is a march off the end of a cliff. It is not affordable. And if I've said this once, I've said it a million times. My kids, your kids, the next generation of kids, they aren't going to care whether or not the home they live in is net zero. What they're going to care is that they have a roof and 4 walls. And that's what they're going to care about. So let's simplify things. Let's make things more affordable to build, right? Do we want to consider rewarding people if they want to go crazy on energy efficiency or whatever else? Sure. If that's something that, government officials and people think is a really valuable thing, have at her. But in the meantime, let's let people like myself and our other builders build homes that the clients want. Just in closing on the insulation walls thing, if you want your home to be as energy efficient as possible, don't have any windows, don't have any doors. Windows and doors are highly inefficient, right? A single pane window has an R value of approximately R1. So basically 0. Double pane, 2 to 3. If it's double pane with argon and low E, you're looking at 3.5 to 4. Triple pane argon plus low E is R5 to R7, and then triple pane krypton plus low E is R7 to R10. So that's starting to get interesting, but I believe, if memory serves me correct, that also starts to get insanely expensive. So again, my question to everybody is, where is the ROI? If we are so desperate to build affordable homes, you take windows, for example, if you're not getting an ROI of 20 years or less, you're losing money for sure, because generally speaking, the sealed units of your windows, they crack, and that's where you get the fogging happening inside of them and whatever else. And then the entire double pane or triple pane system needs to get replaced, right? So that costs money. Again, We need to challenge what we're being told and do the math ourselves. Don't believe everything that everybody's telling you. Figure it out. Do your own math. I've been talking about this for years. I talk about it in private with other builders. Nobody wants to come out and talk about this stuff because it goes against what the current narrative is and what, everybody is saying we should be caring about and what we should be doing. I agree. Let's take care of the environment. We only have one Earth, but let's not do it and put everybody out of homes and into tents and homeless shelters. Let's build affordable housing. Let's reduce the requirements of the building code, not increase. Cut red tape. Cut. All right. End of the rant there. All right. Well, listen, that's a lot we've talked about today. I am so grateful that you're here and that you're watching. And I would love to know what you would like to hear more about. If there's stories that you'd like me to tell, if you have your own story that you would like me to share on our channel here, I really, really, really want to use this platform to create change, right? Education and change through education. We need to be able to deliver affordable housing to everybody in this wonderful country we call Canada. So let's start making some intelligent changes. Please like and subscribe. If this was interesting, if it wasn't interesting, I'd still appreciate a sub. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Stay awesome. Bye now.